Yo, 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 what's up, what's up, what's up? Give up the rock. Hello to my fellow revolutionaries. Um, I hope you have all enjoyed your weekend, unless you're watching this in a place where the weekend still exists. Then I say uh, good morning to you from Australia. Congratulations for keeping the dream alive, the working class dream that is through living through the weekend. Now, my microphone seems to be playing up to that. So if at any point you can't hear me properly or something like that, just like tell me and I will try to, I don't know, get close to the mic or something else. I don't know. But I will try to remedy that as quickly as possible. So, today we are going to be going or continuing along a journey which we have now been going on for like I think at least over a week into the idea of techno-feudalism as defined by Yanis Varoufakis. I believe he coined that term himself, and for good reason. He coined that. Now we've gone on a bit of a journey here, and we had a bit of we went on a bit of a tangent on Friday just because it was topical. And we had a look at the JFK files that were released and sort of like speculated on kind of what that means geopolitically, or like just generally politically for the US and those citizens. And today we're going to return to the investigation of techno-feudalism, but like specifically roll call, Ollie Atlas. Hello, welcome, welcome. And yeah, we're going to be specifically continuing the investigation into techno-feudalism, but by looking at its theoretical underscore, which I would call the work done by Shoshana Zuboff, who I just love saying her name, by the way, as Jag would know. I practice my American accent by saying Shoshana Zuboff, which is Shoshana. That's how I imagine all Americans address her when they say hello. And yes, her work is like been absolutely instrumental in kind of mapping out like what is going on with the tech establishment. So your techno feudal lords, as Yanis Varoufakis would describe them, or cloudlists, as he also described, the tech bros, as they've become more affectionately termed and known as over the last, I don't know, 6 months or something, and then like, especially after the election of Donald Trump. And like, she's really analyzed the positionality of how this section of bourgeoisie has come to power and its context within capitalism, and how this style of capitalism, this surveillance capitalism, has rewritten the rules of the game in the 21st century. And more than that, it has led us to a new stage of capitalism because it is almost ubiquitous, this form of surveillance capitalism. And like markets can no longer function in the world without some form of relations with the surveillance capitalist. Okay, so they have become the centerpiece in the capitalist mode of production. Now, this is obviously different to how Yanis Varoufakis would describe it, as like being a new mode of production altogether that is given to us by the tech bros, and they are our new techno-feudal lords who control even the capitalists themselves. Now, so Shoshana doesn't go down this path. She doesn't describe it as a new mode of production. She's very happy to continue with the vein and the idea of capitalism itself, and then just develop this at a new stage. So, like, you may be familiar with people calling, this late stage of capitalism that we're in at the moment, financial capitalism, where, the financial giants of the world, the big banks and financial institutions control capitalism. So no longer the industrial capitalists, but the financial institutions of the world, the people that basically run Wall Street and things like that. they're the ones who control capitalism. So like that's been kind of a that's been kind of a thing now since like the 80s and like neoliberalism generally. But like we've moved past that now. Now we're full into the 21st century, and since the advent and the rise of the internet. Yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rub. It's 4 a.m. in the house. How are you? It's good to have you. We're going to be continuing our journey into this world of techno-feudalism and capitalism, and surveillance capitalism, the theoretical underscore, I would say, of techno-feudalism and what has influenced Yanis Varoufakis's opinions and theses on how something's killed capitalism, and we're in a new mode of production now. Shoshana doesn't go as far as that, and I think she has good reason not to do that, because she doesn't see the mode of production based on capital change at all, but the laws of the game, the rules of the game, sorry, have been rewritten completely. So the audio is far. Hello? Damn it. Can you hear me at all? I don't know what to do with this mic. I've been trying to sound check this in the background for like the last half an hour. Like as is, you can't hear it at all. Maybe there's feedback. Now. Sounds crunchy. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm going to turn down the compressor on this. Yeah, I'm just trying out new filters. Sort of, yeah. Like I'm gonna turn down the compressor on it, but that means like I don't know if you guys can actually hear me because it's not able to push the volume today. I'm like, I just don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know, man. Seems a bit strange to me, man. Right, give me a second. What the fuck's wrong with the audio? One thing though, like with all this type of stuff, like you can look like shit, but you can't sound like shit. People expect good audio. Testing 1, 2. Tell me if you're still getting. Got to mask your real voice to avoid AI voice cloning. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm actually up to right now. It's so that I don't get deep faked. Um, yes, it's still there. I don't know what to do then. So, uh, yeah, let's try to. Testing. What? Whoa. What about this? Is that any better? Fuck, that's really loud now. So about the XLR and cycle the interface. That's what I'm trying. Way better. Okay, thank you. Because I've been struggling with this for like the last fucking half an hour. Whoa, it's really loud now. Look at that. It's peaking. It's peaking. Hello, testing, testing. Got it. All right. Okay, we've done it. I've got the whole tech crew here. Thank you. I'm just gonna turn that down now. It seems to be overcooked. It's peaking like a duck. All right. I'm glad that that's fixed though. Fuck me dead. It's really peaking. I'm gonna push this back now. Damn, still. Testing, testing. Yo, yo, yo.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I was saying, we're going to be having a look at surveillance capitalism today, and we're going to be looking at a lecture. So just slow down, because I know you're all fucking about to jump off the edge of your seat with excitement. But like, it is going to be eye-opening, if nothing else. Like I said, Shoshana, who is just like very keen intellectual, let's say, has spent like over a decade of her life trying to analyze how the hell we got to a point like where Silicon Valley literally controls geopolitics now. Don't worry about the picking issue. YouTube compresses your audio anyway. Oh, excellent. I really need a tech guy. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jerry Poppins. Yeah. And so, like, we're gonna go like kind of back in time with Shoshana, and she's gonna explain how we got here, how the Silicon Valley and the tech bros started to reign supreme, how they even changed capitalism itself to suit their own needs and own advantages. And like we're gonna look at this from like more of a historical materialist lens because like it's not like many people think when you criticize capitalism and stuff like that or capitalists it's like this good versus evil thing, and it's really not that. Like the way that like the history unfolded, it wasn't like a bunch of people sitting down in Silicon Valley and was just like, how do we take over the world kind of thing. They weren't really thinking like that. They were just trying to kind of be the best kind of in the game and like um collect as much data as possible, kind of collect them all kind of thing. And then like that opened up certain avenues and the infrastructure got built upon the infrastructure. And now they have the ability to basically monitor everything that you're doing all the time. And tinfoil hat intensifies, deep state adjusts its glasses. It's very much like that. Okay. It's very, very much like that. Like, as I've said many times, it was so telling that Donald Trump had like the biggest tech bros of Silicon Valley right there at his inauguration front of center. Like he could have picked anyone from the bourgeoisie to be there, but like he had Zuckies, he had Musk, obviously, he had Bezos, and he had the guy from I can't remember the CEO of Google there as well. Like, and all billionaires too, might I add. But like, it was a real nod to how like Silicon Valley has taken primacy in the world. It's not your financial elites anymore. It's not your Goldman Sachs and your big banks and all that sort of stuff, though they are important. And then the next day, one of the very first kind of big announcements was Project Stargate, which was just like, we need massive investment in information technologies, communication technologies, and AI. We need it. We need it. We need it. And we need $500 billion to get this stuff off the ground and back on home soil. So like, it's all going according to the K Keikaku. I don't know what that reference is. And John Soros, have you ever actually been on this stream before? I don't know if I've seen the name before. So welcome to the stream. Doge uses entirely people under 25 for its tech stuff, each personally hired by Elon. Yes. First time. Well, welcome. Welcome to the stream. And yeah, we're going to be speaking about surveillance capitalism today. So I'm not sure if you're across it or not, but we will try and cover that. So if you have questions, let me know. Yes, and I've heard he's got an army of young people, and like he can use that to justify, um, some of the more heinous stuff that will come out of the Doge Inquisition. I would like to call it, where they're purging the government sector, and like I'm sure there's efficiencies to be added. I'm sure there's savings to be had, but like my tech bro techno feudalists, surveillance capitalist assessment of Doge is got really nothing to do. Um, Meaning, plan, project, schedule, scheme, program. Keikaku. I've never heard of that term. That's interesting. Thank you. And no one expects the Doge Inquisition. And like, yeah, the real plan there is to like gut out certain sections of the classic like neoliberal tactic, starving the beast, as they would call it, as 4IS would attest to. They will cut the government service. People will demand satisfaction when government services and things fail on yeah expectations are not met, and then to the rescue will be people like Elon Musk with their AI solutions, and then they will be able to replace those humans in those sectors of the government service with machines that will do the same thing. So that's my long range tinfoil hat theory, and like we'll see if that actually comes. Absolutely hate starving the beast and austerity logic, but it is the logic that makes the neoliberal world go round for us. High class dinners for me, austerity for you, baby. And that's why, you know, it is just way more of a ruling class ideology than anything else, the neoliberal ethos. It's got nothing to do with like liberalism was a bit more society focused, where this now is really just about controlling the economy and society. And surveillance capitalism, I think, has been unleashed on the world. Techno-feudalism has been unleashed on the world as a development of the ideology of neoliberalism. Like without the neoliberal logic of privatize everything and control everything, like you would never have gotten the framework for surveillance capitalism. So I will shut up now and like let's have a look at her lecture. And like I said, this is going to be so exciting that everyone's going to want to jump in on this. So like stop me as you wish, and like leave a comment, and like we'll discuss as we go along. But this is Shoshana, baby, please. Zuboff, best name in American intellectual spheres, and you know, pretty pretty cunning intellectual too. She's literally been described by some as the Marx of the 21st century, because like she has given us the analytical framework to dissect the surveillance capitalist state, state of affairs, as opposed to like government, this surveillance capitalism generally. Just like Marx in Das Kapital gave us like the analytical framework to understand the beast, the juggernaut that was the capitalist mode of production. So let's hear what she has to say. But like, you know, like I said, comments away, and like I will obviously stop and comment as I see fit. But like, you know, she's going to be dropping some truth bombs here, and it's going to give you some real good context as to why we are all slaves to our devices right now, and why we're on them right now, which is not ultimately a problem, but the way that we are on them and go about doing that is the problem. But I'll let her say that. Let's go.
All right. Everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. So, I don't know, the year 1986 doesn't seem that long ago to me. But, you know, in the year 1986, only 1% of the world's information was stored digitally. That surprise you? In the year 2000, it was 25%. But in the year 2013, it was 100%.
Isn't that fucking nuts? That's mental. Like I don't know how they actually get that stat, but like 100% of our information, of the world's information, is online now. Like there must be record systems in remote parts of the world, or just like in like companies and big organizations that haven't fully gone digital. But like, you know, I've worked for government before, and there were massive drives in governmental organizations to like get all of the records departments online. Everything had to be stored online. That was a cost-cutting exercise for the government for the most part, because like all of their files were held in massive storage facilities, which was huge cost to them, and they legally had to maintain records for, you know, certain periods of time and for like, you know, certain needs. But like, you know, why have that in a warehouse that could burn down one day? You know, put it online and just pay for some subscription for some, you know, data center that manages your data resources for you, as opposed to, like I said, filing everything. But like 100% is now of all information is now online. It's incredible to think about.
That's a big leap. So I always wondered what happened to account for that big leap between 2000 and 2013. And then I spent a decade of my life figuring out the answer to that question. But let me sort of creep up on that answer a little bit sideways by telling you a story about a man named Gus Hunt. Anybody ever hear of Gus Hunt? Well, Gus Hunt, in the year 2013, was the Chief Technology Officer of the CIA. Anybody ever hear of the...
I've heard of the CIA, you smartass. All right, let's go look at Gus Hunt, hey? Gus Hunt, CIA. Gus Hunt, American cybersecurity expert. There we go. Gussie. It's good to put a face to the name. He looks American, don't you reckon? He's got like a general American look to him. All right, now you've got that guy in your mind. Let's continue.
CIA? Okay, so CIA. And Gus liked to talk, and he went to a public conference. It was a GigaOM conference. This is software, software types and journalists and so forth. Held in New York City, open conference. All you had to do is pay $40 and you could buy a ticket and go to any session. And Gus had one of those, windowless, cheerless rooms and a vast conference center where he carefully set up his PowerPoints, stood on the podium, chatted with the MC, the moderator, and volunteered that he would be happy to stay after the session if people wanted to ask questions and so forth. I want to tell you a little bit about what Gus Hunt said on that day, March 2013, New York City. First, he cheerfully described the CIA's mission, of course, protecting national security, which he translated into the pursuit of total information awareness. The way he characterized the challenges of
Total information awareness. Okay, so like if you're looking for an objective as to what surveillance capitalism is, what techno-feudalism is, what the role of the tech industry in Silicon Valley, as it is combined kind of with, security interests and all that sort of stuff, because that is very real. That is very real. The merging together of the tech industry, Silicon Valley, and like the security agencies and all that sort of stuff. It's like, and this is the word that they use that is like, good for PR. It's good sounding for public relations purposes. Total information awareness. I thought they were going to go for control, awareness. Remember, this type of language is important.
This pursuit are important. For example, he said, we have to connect the dots. Some of you, I can tell, my compatriots, we are old enough to recall when 9/11 occurred and the intelligence agencies were blamed for not connecting the dots. There's going to be a lot of audience participation, so you better get used to it. Not connecting the dots. So at the CIA, everybody is, we're connecting the dots. But as Gus points out, you don't necessarily know what's a dot. These trillions and trillions of little bits of data don't go around with a little badge saying, I'm a dot, you're going to want me. No. So what Gus told his audience, which is correct, is that since you can't connect dots you don't have, and since you don't necessarily know what is a dot, it therefore drives us into the mode of, quote, trying to collect everything and hang on to it forever.
It's a big call. right? But like this is what surveillance capitalism is all about. This is what like the people in Silicon Valley think they can do. This is why they need more and more data centers. They need more and more energy. We need more power, kind of thing. Because like they are really realistically looking to capture everything and keep it forever, so they can use it as a way to kind of, you know, increase their bottom line. But like they'll do that through like various strategies and all that sort of stuff. So like this stuff is not pie in the sky. This is not fantasy stuff here. Okay, this is really what the objective is. It is about like capturing as much data as possible and keeping all of that data. So like you never know when it will be useful and how it could be aggregated with other data points and other people and clusters and all that sort of stuff to sell to the right person for the right price. This is what the aim of like this entire system of surveillance capitalism is about. It's about surveilling the world's populations in ways that we think are just completely farcical. Like you just wouldn't believe some of the stuff that they're up to, and they're monitoring and stuff like that. And like you have to ask yourself the question, well, like what would they be able to do with all of this data? And like last week we had someone come on and they're just like, this is, you know, complete fantasy that like they would be wanting to monitor your conversations or listen to you or like monitor certain devices, and like it's not fantasy. This stuff is not fantasy at all. It's really, really crucial to the way the entire world economy actually works right now. And like there is so much value in your data. And it's not just the data that you think you're giving them as well. It's everything else. There's actually way more about the stuff that you don't even know that you're giving to them, which is important. I've worked in many data centers. Amazon has so many around Sydney. It's insane. Very secretive as well. No photos ever under any circumstances. That's pretty crazy. I wonder why they don't let you take any photos ever under any circumstances. Did they explain why? That would be interesting to know. Mr. Poppins.
Exalted the tech companies because they had become the means of achieving that critical CIA goal. It required the agency to take advantage of what he called, quote, the massive information streams that have emerged on the planet. And he went out of his way to joyfully acknowledge with such gratitude Google, which he called a very big provider of things, Facebook, where 35% of the world's digital photography is already posted, YouTube.
Isn't that crazy? If you think about it, right? At this point in like what, the early 2000s, like Facebook was providing like most of the world's digital photography was stored on Facebook, like because people would take pictures and upload them to Facebook. And so like digital photography like kind of lived on Facebook for a long time. Like that's basically the value that Facebook had. I remember being on Facebook for the first time that it ever recognized people's faces. I uploaded a bunch of pictures and it came up with like tags next to people's faces, and it was just like, is this person? And like you could, because you used to be able to tag your friends in photos and stuff like that, and like it would come up and it's just like, is this person? I'm like, oh wow, this is so much easier now. I don't have to go through and tag everyone's photos. But like it was setting up basically the largest photo album on Earth and documenting the world's populations and collecting and using all of those photos as data points to basically mass data streams so it could sell that off to third parties and make billions and billions of dollars in advertising revenues and what other types of data products that they sell to third parties. Not sure why, but you can fill in the blanks. I've worked in data centers in military bases as well. Amazon security is much more strict than the military. Oh, wow. That is a good, that's interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, Bezos, he's got a lot to protect. He's got a global empire to protect. Militaries, they just look after one country at a time. Hey, who cares about one nation's interests when you've got a global empire to run?
The only exabyte scale or bigger repository on the planet, he said. Twitter can't beat those 4,500 tweets per second, and the telcos for their global text messaging and mobile phones. In recognition of ubiquitous location tracking, Hunt instructed his audience in a kind of avuncular way. You know, he said, you're already a walking sensor platform. You should all be worried about who has your data, who owns your data, and if you'll ever be able to know exactly what they know about you.
I think that's a scary notion, right? It's like how much, like based on your data, like think of all the stuff that you've done, like, you know, online, like ever, and like, you know, not just the sites you've interacted with, like maybe it's just like you carrying your phone around like every day and like it's tracking locational data on you. And like maybe it recognizes every time that you just like put it up to your face to check the time or something like that. Like think of all the interactions you've had inadvertently and like directly with like, you know, online presence or something like that. I wonder what they know about you. Like, could you imagine what they know about you? Like how personal the information would be? You know, MysterE enjoys this at exactly 4:05 p.m. on a daily basis, usually on weekdays. Weekends are a little bit different. Like you could pinpoint exactly what he'll be doing at this point, or like, you know, what he'll be feeling like at this point, or like this is how he reacts when something pisses him off. This is what he will do next, kind of thing, et cetera, et cetera. Like that might sound fanciful, but like if you've read her book and like you kind of you're used to like the type of stuff and evidence that she kind of cites, this doesn't sound so extreme. Aren't you scared of talking about these topics? Yeah, 100%. I was actually just uploading a series of clips that I had taken from a stream to Instagram. And like I was talking about the involvement of like the tech bros with like the CIA kind of thing. And like I was like speculating on whether I should put the CIA in the title or just leave it as in like, you know, tech bros and like intelligence services. But like CIA was so much shorter. And then like I got clipped off Instagram for a few days and I was just like, oh crap. And so like I'd been doing some research and was like, why have I been like, I basically couldn't post for like 3 days. And they're like, oh, you've been flagged for something. Like that was the general consensus. And like they'll check you out. It might take a few days for them to check you out and make a decision about whether you're, I don't know, a threat or not. But like, yeah, if you if you're worried about being censored, if you're worried about like, you know, being shut down, like this is the stream for you. Ollie Atlas can attest, and some others can too. We usually get our chat censored here, and we have been kicked off before. So like I am attentive to the what's the word? The risks of talking about this stuff. But like important nonetheless. I am way too small of a fish, I think, for them to worry about. Unless we say key words here that they don't like, then they just shut us down via algorithm. But like, you know, it's a small little company, this one. So like, you know, we probably fly under the radar, I'd say. Bringing this topic up to people makes them treat me like I am a flat earther or something. Yes, and like I was saying, like last week we had someone come in and they're just like, they don't want to listen to you. Like, who wants to listen to you, kind of thing. Like, and like, you know, who has the resources to do that anyway? And like, the real question is like, you know, or the real I think important factor in all of this is like, it's not because they're monitoring you because they've got like armies of workers or something like that listening to you and analyzing you. This is all done by machines, and machines and AI can pick up on patterns, trends, and information that we as humans would never be able to pick up on because it's just done at sheer scale. And so, like, they are getting way more information than we think, and it's all being categorized and analyzed by machines, algorithms specifically. It is completely automated. And so, like, yes, a lot of people do think it's all, flat earth, crazy conspiracy stuff, but, like, just watch this lecture, like, and just read some of her work, and, like, it's not conspiracy stuff at all. Voice to text, packet scanning. John, it's a closed-minded world, and people need to learn what they need. It is a closed-minded world. And like our mission statement here is that we're going to enlighten the human race eventually and bring back some working class consciousness. Because that's when, like, historically, things have really changed, and like we've gotten a lot of wins on the board against like the capitalist kind of machine. That's the best odds we've ever had when we've had good working class consciousness. And like, if it's true that like people see this stuff as flat earth style conspiracy theories, then like their consciousness is zero. And like, that's exactly what our techno-feudal overlords want. It's exactly what they want.
Perhaps most significant of all of his really mind-blowing comments that afternoon, he said, I think we're at high noon in the information age. It really is very nearly within our grasp to be able to compute on all human-generated information. 2013, 100% of digital information stored in 2013. So the short answer to what made the difference between 2000 and 2013 and what made the difference so fast was the unprecedented financial success of what I've called surveillance capitalism. Because, of course, it's thanks to that success that Gus could be so grateful to those individual companies who were sitting on trillions and trillions and trillions of dots flowing through their pipes on a daily basis. It is our shared fate now to live at the dawn of information civilization, which earns its name from the new conditions of existence that we share, in which inclusion in the coordinates of the world's atlas requires that persons, and increasingly all that is animate and inanimate, are rendered as and mediated by digital information. The question is, who knows that information? Who decides who knows? Who decides who decides who knows? These are what I call the essential questions of knowledge, authority, and power that define the social order of our time. And yet here we are in the fourth year of the third decade of the digital century, and it's the surveillance capitalist giants and their ecosystems. If you don't know who I'm talking about Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, and they hold the answers to all of these questions. Though we never elected them to govern. I don't remember electing them, do you? Do you?
It's a good question, right? Like, these companies hold like significant data on like entire swathes of the world's population, and like they've taken it without any type of consideration or agreement from the general population whose data it is, and without really any regulation, like at all, by the world's governments. It's starting to trickle in now, or over the last 5 to 10 years, but like very slowly in comparison to how fast all of this has moved. And like, who really gave permission for all of this to happen? Like, for all of this value to be extracted from people in the aggregate and then used to basically surveil us, like non-stop surveil. Wings of cheese, hello. It is good to see you have descended into the building from on high. This was the woman we watched last time, right? Yeah, this is Shoshana. So this is Shoshana. And like, we watched last time, I think, was an interview that she had done. No, a documentary that she had done like 6 years ago or something like that. And this one, and this is why I actually want to watch this one. This one's from 2024. So like, I am interested to see if anything that she is talking about has updated since then, or if she has any new information to give us. Because like, yeah, if you look at a lot of her stuff, it's from like 5 years ago when she dropped her book kind of thing. And like a lot of stuff from then, from like that period, and like a bit of radio silence in between that. But she's back and she's talking about the stuff, and I think she's like made her ideas a little bit more precise, and developed her theory a lot more since then. And like, she gives some pretty crazy examples here in this lecture. So let us continue learning about surveillance capitalism. Like, as we were saying last time, Wings of Cheese, like, you know, maybe we're not techno-feudalism yet, but like, there is more than reason enough to believe that we are in a surveillance capitalist state. We've left financial capitalism, if that was the stage we were in, like imperialism as Lenin knew it 100 years ago, the highest stage of capitalism as he would describe it. That was like his foresight into the neoliberalism that was coming. But like, all of that pales in comparison now, because like, those stages were all technologically gifted by the mode of production. So the productive forces at the time allowed, you know, imperialism in the Leninist sense. Like, you know, big corporations could control countries and like, you know, endeavor on neo-colonial-esque projects. And then like, in the financial capital age, like gifted to us from neoliberalism, you had huge financial institutions that roamed the earth, reaping havoc on like, you know, poor countries, and debt trapping people, and you know, giving life into transnational corporations, so they could basically corner markets and form cartels across the globe. And now, in the information age, thanks to the onset of digital technology and high-speed telecommunications technology, we have a different form of the bourgeoisie who have taken power now. It is our tech bros and the Silicon Valley giants, and their corresponding and their counterparts in the Chinese example. But like, she specifically looks at this through a Western lens, a free market Western lens. She doesn't comment on like the Chinese way of doing things. That's a whole nother beast. But like, they are surveillance capitalists themselves. Like, they are aggregating huge data on their populations and using that to their advantage to not only control the population, but like, kind of become the establishment and the ruling class themselves. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with Shoshana at the moment. And like, she just explained, just so you've got some context, that like, there was a CIA representative that went to a forum in 2013 and described what the CIA's objective was when it came to this digital age that we've embarked upon. And they want total information awareness, which is like total information control. Every piece of data that people leave behind, they think that they should be able to collect that, store that, and use it to their own, for their own purposes. And like, it is the private sector, so your Googles of the world, your tech giants, that are going to facilitate this. Like, government isn't the thing that does this type of stuff anymore. Like, you know, during the Cold War, like, the government, like the state, was the only actor in the economy that had the means to, like, you know, develop the space race and, you know, and send people kind of to the moon, let's say. But like, in this era, post neoliberalism, now digital age, it is only private organizations that have the conglomeration of capital behind them that can endeavor on total information awareness. So it is the CIA's kind of objective, Central Intelligence Services and agencies. They have this dream, but it is the private sector who can really deliver on this, because they have the infrastructure, they have the global reach, and they can move like this amorphous kind of being outside of national boundaries and beyond the control of like governments in a geopolitical way that no government could ever do, because it would just be accused of espionage or something like that. But these private entities, they are beyond control of any nation state.
So how did we get here? Again, surveillance capitalism is an important part of this equation. But what a lot of us don't realize is that surveillance capitalism is what happened when democracy stood down. And everything that we are experiencing reverts back to that one singular fact. So really, this story winds up in 1997. Clinton was in the White House. Gore, Mr. Information Highway, was his vice president. And these two released a very important white paper. It was a seminal paper on information and electronic commerce. It was their e-commerce manifesto.
I want to check this out. Clinton, Gore, white paper. Is this it? The internet, this looks like it's from the 90s. Check out this. Clinton House for Archives. This historical material frozen in time. The internet has the potential to become the United States' most active trade vehicle within a decade, creating millions of high-paying jobs. In addition, internet shopping may revolutionize retailing by allowing consumers to sit in their homes and buy a wide variety of products and services from all over the world. Many businesses and consumers are wary of conducting extensive business electronically. However, because the internet lacks a predictable legal environment governing transactions, and because they are concerned that governments will impose regulations and taxes that will stifle internet commerce, outlines a framework for global electronic commerce, outlines the administration's strategy for fostering increased business and consumer confidence in the use of electronic networks for commerce. This is interesting. President William J. Clinton and Vice President Albert Gore Jr. I think this is the one. Interesting. I think all entities are going all out on maximizing it and profiting off it before it becomes illegal. It's a gold rush. It is a definite gold rush at the moment, or like a period like in the Wild Wild West, and like there's no rules, there's no laws, and like there's some big players in town that really control the space. And the government has no control over it either. And so, like, I would argue though, like before it becomes illegal, like I don't know if it'll become illegal. Like, I think there's way too much value in this now, to be honest. Like I said, like Trump lined up the tech bros at his inauguration. Like there was no, oh, you guys got to come to heel kind of thing. It was just like, here's $500 billion. Would you guys like fries with that? Like, what else do you want kind of thing? We're in war. We're at like cyber war with like China and like all that sort of stuff. And like, we got to win this AI arms race. Coercive laws of competition. I think 4IS has hit the nail on the head there. Like this type of stuff is a veritable arms race. It is the new kind of Cold War kind of thing. Like it was atomic weapons before. It is no longer atomic weapons. It is the development of AI. And AI, okay, it is only as good as the data that you feed it. It's not generally intelligent yet, so it doesn't go off and do its own stuff without human objective and human interaction and feedback and stuff. It needs good data. And so, like, I don't see anyone pinning this. If anything, like JD Vance has been going over to Europe, and Europe has the GDR, GDPR. I can't remember the acronym, but like they've got the best like laws on internet and privacy protection and all that sort of stuff to kind of grapple with the tech bros and the tech giants of the Western world. And like JD Vance was just like, you're killing free speech. You guys really need to relax your laws and let us do what we want to do and what we need to do, or America's not going to be happy, like kind of thing. So like I really don't know if there's going to be any reins put on the tech sector anytime soon, not from an American sense anyway. Pretty cool how they predicted this in the 90s. Yeah, this is crazy. And like, how good was that website, right? It's just like, soon people will buy things on the internet. How absurd. So funny. Child labor, slavery was made illegal, and back then it was normal as fuck. I think we are in the same place where it is so normal that it is inconceivable that it would become illegal. Well, you know, to be honest, like it took a long time for them. Like if we're talking about industrial revolution child labor, like it took a long time for them to do that. Like it took a while. Like it was like industrial revolution on steroids from like the end of the 18th century into like the mid 19th century. Like we're talking about 50, 60 years before they eradicated child labor. And like not everywhere, like let's be honest. So like I agree that like this may one day be considered illegal, or they'll have to do it like, you know, playing within the rules of the game. I just don't see that happening anytime soon, that's all. I think like for people like us, it's not inconceivable. But like you said, like most people look at this stuff when you say, did you know that they have this type of information on you kind of thing? And people are just like, that's outrageous. That could never happen kind of thing. Like as long as people's like default option is like, no, that's not true, like kind of thing, I don't think like anything will change. There needs to be like, there was an ideological understanding like in industrial Britain that child labor was wrong. Like most people were just like, no, I don't think we should be killing children in the name of profit kind of thing. And like slavery and stuff like that, there was the general consensus in the population, not an overwhelming one, but there was enough of a general consensus in the population for people to be like, no, slavery is not right anymore. We shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. And it like served some interests too. Like the war on slavery in America, depending on who you speak to, and like I don't want to rain on any American parades over here, but like the war on slavery was less about like human rights and more about the fact that like the northern industrialists were like, we can't compete with like the fact that wage labor is so expensive in the US compared to like across the Atlantic in like industrial Britain or something like that, or like continental Europe. And we have to compete with like slave owners down in the south down here who get to literally own like their workers and stuff like that. So like there was a bit of a tussle going on between northern industrialists and like the slave owners in the south. So like there was a financial gain to be had by industrialists by eradicating slavery. I would say a lot of these companies at the moment would gain a lot from just having access to free data. Like I am all for writing a new Bill of Rights for the 21st century, and like that Bill of Rights would have as an inalienable human right control over your data, and then from that then you get to be like choose whether you want to be paid for it or not, because like they're making like ridiculous sums of money out of all of this data. So we should all get a cut. All of us should get a cut, goddammit. Ad starts. The more you know. The AI arms race is the corporate equivalent of the Cold War. I think it is, yeah. Like look what happened with DeepSeek and OpenAI. Like that was hilarious. Like, you know, they really embarrassed, like the Chinese really embarrassed OpenAI and like, you know, and just the American kind of tech sector generally. Like they were like, we're years ahead of the Chinese. And it's like just before that happened, it was like went from like 3 years in front to be, oh, maybe only a year. Oh, maybe only 6 months ahead. And then bang, they just kind of, yeah, they embarrassed them greatly. There's very cool videos from the early 2000s predicting what our technology in the households might be like in the 2020s. Oh, we'll have to have a look at one of those if you can source one. But you're right. People have the capacity to have power over others in an invisible way is something that will be too difficult to give up. Yeah, it's a very interesting form of value creation. It's a value creation that comes directly from the consumer class, which is very interesting. Unlike, controlling a working class or something, it's a very different game now. Adam Smith and his invisible hand rolling in his grave. The space race, except it can actually pose a threat to either side's civilian population. Yeah, I guess the space race is pretty innocuous, right? Like, as long as like the rockets don't come back down and fall on the civilians or something like that. Like, it's pretty benign, apart from the astronauts that kept dying. But like this stuff, like, it really does impact people. And like, we watched Shoshana's documentary like last week, and like she's talking about like how they were manipulating like teenagers in Australia and New Zealand, and like they know when they're sad and stuff like that, and like they can even do experiments. Like Facebook were doing experiments in like 2016, could like manipulating people's emotional behavior. They had the tools to make people sad or happy or angry, and they were testing this out in like 2016, like broad scale testing out like whether they could make people upset or not. And so like, so much more damage than like, the space race, I guess. You're right.
And what it really did was set forth the rules for how the internet was going to operate and how businesses were going to interact with and exist on the internet. And so this white paper began with very strong statements that were essentially the catechism of the entire white paper. And the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and repeated throughout. And that essential catechism was that the private sector must lead. The document begins with that view, and some of you will recognize here the radical free market ideology that reigned uncontested since the early 1980s. Let us not forget that when Ronald Reagan was a candidate,
listen to this 4AS
candidate, he had an economic advisor, and his economic advisor was, you know the answer, Milton Friedman.
I didn't know he like during his presidential like run, Milton Friedman was actually advising him. I thought like he was kind of just called in as like Mr. Fix-It kind of thing and just be like, yeah, I'll tell you, I'm wise old Milton Friedman. But he was actually the economic advisor. Like actual, like that's why we have such fierce neoliberalism, because like Friedman was at the helm. Like he had his hands on the steering wheel kind of thing. That little midget, that bastard, he was in control. Like it makes so much sense about like what happened, like what Reaganism is and all that sort of stuff. Yes, Friedman, little bastard. Ollie Atlas, as long as AI isn't given access to nuclear bombs, we're good. Usually why the robo-apocalypse is possible in those stories. Yes, Skynet. In order to protect humans, we're just going to wipe them all out and then they won't need protecting anymore. Yeah. Well, like there's a lot of debate going on about this at the moment, about like there's two types of AI inclusion in militaristic decisions that is going on at the moment. And like you can see this kind of on display in like the Ukraine and stuff like that. But like there's two forms or two lines of thought. There's like AI that has strategic capabilities and then has to have human feedback. So a human in the loop that decides whether or not for the AI, after it's made a strategic decision, whether it should execute its order or execute on a target. And then there is like the kind of laissez-faire style of AI involvement in like warfare, which is like, okay, this is the objective, go do it, like kind of thing, like wipe out the enemy's forces. And so like AI can go off and like whatever strategic decision it comes to, it can like make a decision on that without any human oversight at all. And so there's a lot of discussion about that. And so like there's like geopolitical discussions happening at the moment between like, major powers about whether they should go with the former. So the one where like, okay, AI can be used, but like it really shouldn't have the ultimate decision before it does anything. Like we should make sure that some human ultimately makes the decision. But like the big kind of question mark is like, if everyone agrees to that, like, you know, when they agreed to not use like chemical weapons or something like that after World War One, like who really polices that? And like, what if someone just decides to just let it happen anyway, and then they get the edge because they're letting AI make all these decisions, and AI can make, you know, decisions based on like data from military operations in like split seconds compared to humans having to be involved and giving it the go ahead and all that sort of stuff, and all of that red tape. So like, you know, the question is they can have all the talks that they want, but if it's more efficient and someone just pulls the trigger and lets the AI do it, then the race is over. And that goes the same with like atomic bombs and stuff. So, what? Petrie Farm remembers. Yeah, well, Petrie Farm remembers that Friedman was Reagan's advisor. That's mental. Also for Ultron and Allied Master Computer as well. Well, could AI be programmed with proper military protocol and rules such as the Geneva Conventions? And like the answer is like, you know, unequivocally, yes. Of course it could be programmed to make sure it observes the Geneva Conventions and Articles of War and all that sort of stuff. But like, you still don't know. If in order for it to make a decision to comply with the Articles of War, and like it has a cross objective, which is like to win, let's say, you don't know if the AI has the ability to set or to deliver on its objectives, and like give more weighting to one objective kind of over another. And like, you definitely don't know if you don't have a human in the loop. Like, you definitely don't know what it's giving more weight to if you don't have humans in the loop. So that would make war a bit more humane. It's funny that you actually say that, because I've heard people say that AI will make war more humane, because like if it has more data and can make better decisions, right? Because, you know, let's say it's got access to satellites and can make quick decisions on the fly, that humans might not be able to see patterns in. Like, it'll be able to tell from reading satellite images much faster than a human if there are any civilian targets in a certain landscape, and can make decisions based on whether or not to strike there or then or not. And so like it possibly will just make more warfare more targeted. And so like warfare will just be like, you know, kill all the enemy targets in this area without any collateral damage. And like a swarm of like drones will go out and do so with like zero civilian casualties. So like it could make war incredibly humane in that sense, but like the precision of it would, like, I think, take away a lot of the humanity out of war at the same time. Like, I've heard this stat, and I don't know if this is true, someone can fact check this for me, but like apparently, like during war, like if you're having like a gunfight or something like that with enemies that you can actually see, right? You can see that they're humans. There's a human on the other end there. You're not just like firing artillery or something like that. Like humans 90% of the time miss, and miss on purpose, because like they don't actually want to shoot another human being. Like there's obviously very, very well trained people out there that are basically like death squads, and they do this stuff professionally, but like the average soldier and stuff like that, they don't always fire to kill, like, kind of thing. But machines, like, you know, like give it an objective kind of thing, and like it'll do it with absolute precision. So like it'll make war more efficient, let's say. Emotions such as compassion provide humans an advantage in warfare and help us hold ourselves back. That's right. That's what I'm trying to point out as well. I think we're overestimating the humanity of those with the power of input for this sort of AI. Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Very good point. But like, this is the discussions that are happening at a geopolitical level at the moment. And that's why, like, I prefaced it by saying that, like, the discussion is also, oh yeah, but like, you know, we could have a human in the loop, but if the enemy decides not to do that, then we're completely screwed. So maybe we should do it first before they do. which was always the discussion that was happening around like nuclear proliferation and like what they were going to do with like, you know, treaties on what type of missiles they're going to have, if they're going to have long range missiles or short range missiles, if they're going to like have things stationed like right at someone's border or not, and all this sort of stuff. So like we've been here before with this type of like, this thing could really screw up the human race. Are we sure we want to do it like this? And like it was very, very touch and go. Like in my reply to comment before, imagine if the police start using them for riot control. Well. It's funny that you say that. So like we looked at in a recent podcast, me and 4AS, we looked at this thing called the AI Bill of Rights. So the AI Bill of Rights, which I thought, which was really misleading, I thought the AI Bill of Rights was a Bill of Rights for AI, for artificial intelligence, because like artificial intelligence is going to gain some level of consciousness and should have like rights basically. But like I was disappointed to find out that it's actually a Bill of Rights for humans that are being kind of affected by AI and big tech bro decisions. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just thought that like we were already jumping the gun and we were going to start giving like rights to machines and stuff like that, which I was quite excited about. Anyway, story goes that like they are already using, like police forces around the world, specifically in the US, are already using AI to send the police out on patrols. And so like one of the problems that was happening with this AI is that like, yeah, Terminator needs rights too, man. Like, come on. So one of the problems that is happening, that has already been occurring with AI policing, is that the AI is only as good as the data. And so like there have been instances where police have been sent on the beat to areas because they traditionally had like higher crime rates or things like that, but like there's no correlation to any crime rates currently. So like they might be sent to a bad neighborhood that had like a really bad string of events in like, I don't know, the 2010s, but haven't really had that much crime since then. But the data that it's been run off is like old crime data from, yeah, like I said, like 10, 20 years ago or something like that, and like hasn't been updated in real time. And so like they're sending police officers to areas where there isn't crime, and then like there are actual potential for crimes to be happening in other places, and they're not being sent on patrol there. And it's all got to do with biases in the data. And so like basically they're sending them out to like, you know, marginalized communities and things like that, because that's what, based on the data that the AI systems have been fed that are running these police forces and stuff, or are being hired out and contracted out to these police forces, they're just like, yes, this is a marginalized community, the AI, and it's just like, send the cops there. And it's just like, but we haven't gotten a call for this area for a long time. And it's like, yeah, but there's like, it's a marginalized community, it's going to have crime, so just go and hang out there. And so like cops have just been like hanging out in areas where there haven't been crime, but because like, you know, the AI thinks, hey, these people are more likely to be causing crime, they're like, there's a mismatch going on with policing need versus like AI predictions and stuff like that. And it's all based on bad data. They're like, AI really is only as robust as the data that you can get. Like that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report. Yeah, 100%. It's like, but like, yes, its integrity is in data. And like, if you've got these for-profit companies that are contracting out to law enforcement agencies, and they're just like, you know, it's cheap data, let's just get this stuff from like, you know, 20 years ago, and you don't really question the integrity of the data itself and like whether they're up to date, and like, you know, if it's of good quality, like then like you're just going to have misdirected services, and then like pressure being put on communities. And then you have like things like, you know, Black Lives Matter movements, where you have like all these people that are accusing police forces of just being like, well, you're hanging around our area, we're not even doing anything wrong. And the police are like being sent out by like misplaced AI agents who just think, hey, they like stereotyping communities and stuff like that. So it's like this, you know, cyclical thing, and it's like this crazy feedback loop that's happening. And it's just like, AI is making these decisions, and like law enforcement is going to become increasingly AI regulated, I guess you would say, in a way. And like, that's something for us to think about as well. And like, if you have AI integrated with social media, which is not like AI law enforcement systems integrated with social media, which is not hard to kind of discount at all. The integration of like the tech industry and like, intelligence services, law enforcement is happening. And so like if you have people organizing for a rally, as you're saying, Wings of Cheese, or for a protest or something like that, it'll be like, okay, there's all these people that are congregating in this area or deciding to congregate in this area, send out the cops, send out the riot squads, etc., etc. Not too far-fetched. You just got redacted. Wings of Cheese. I think that's the first one I've seen. I don't know if anyone else has been censored, but Wings of Cheese just got censored. So for today, you win the mantle of saying the most controversial thing in this stream. Congratulations, Wings of Cheese. I haven't seen anyone else get redacted today. So congratulations. We'll have to give you a digital medal or something. Woo! Yeah, congratulations. Everyone, round of applause for Wings of Cheese. Imagine if it's a child's birthday and AI sends riot police. That was self-redaction. Okay, that's I retract the medal. So no one's been censored today. I feel like we haven't achieved much if no one's been censored today. So like, pick your game up, everyone. You're all rather disappointing today, not gonna lie. John needs to know what it's like to be in a stream where people are continually being censored. Also, plug for John Soros. That is Discord and Patreon. I'll get it done. Thank you, Jerry Poppins. That's why you're here, to get to get censored. Yes, for anyone that is new here and doesn't know the usual ritual, we are all on Discord. And we have a place where we share propaganda and talk about all this type of stuff. So you're interested, please come along and join the Discord. And if you'd like to get actual notifications, please come over and join up for free on the Patreon. Here's the Patreon link. And so I can get you proper notifications because I can't get it to you via usual social media channels. It's all filtered by an algorithm, but I can get it to you on Patreon. So go over and join up on Patreon. And let's go back to Shoshana, though this has been a hilarious interlude nonetheless.
So this was really a time when Milton Friedman, who I used to know very well when I was a student, and his wife Rose, who was a self-described kook. Milton Friedman considered on the fringe of...
It let you say it. We got cut off from actual stream for saying two-state solution. I don't know if it's safe to join. I'm being heavily monitored. We are all being heavily monitored, Mr. Soros. So just having a crack. Well, maybe if I start talking about it, it'll cut me off again. I'm not going to test that theory though. Jerry Poppins, I'll let you get censored.
Academic economics, even at the University of Chicago. He and his thinking came to own the political economic space. And that certainly was true for the Republicans, but it also became true for the Democrats. Years later, Larry Summers would speak at Milton's funeral, and he would refer to us Republicans and Democrats and say, we're all Friedmanites now. And so here we are with Clinton and Gore handing the keys to the internet, to the fledgling internet companies sprouting in the sun in Silicon Valley. What they specifically repeated throughout the white paper was that there would be no laws to inhibit tech innovation. What they repeated over and over was that government had to get out of the way. Government was inevitably too slow and would inhibit innovation. If there were any laws on the books that might get in the way, those laws were going to be removed. It wasn't enough just not to pass new laws. And in fact, self-regulation would remain the order of the day as control and governance of the internet was gifted to the private companies of the internet sector. That was 1987. It only took a couple of years, and there were other bodies of rational people in Washington who were already figuring out that this was a terrible mistake. In the FTC, they were seeing the web bugs and the cookies, and they understood that these companies were not going to be able to self-regulate, and it was going to be a privacy, what's that word I'm looking for, when you kill everybody in sight. It was going to be a privacy cataclysm, massacre.
That was a dark joke there. Having a crack at getting censored. Solid fluff growing out of her head, by the way. Bold hairdo. She is an 80s woman, I think. I think you can tell from like the big hair and the glasses, the bangs, the red lipstick and stuff like that. Like, you know, she was in her prime in the 80s. I wonder what she looked like in the 80s, actually. Let's have a look-sees. There we go, Shoshana. Shoshana! Shoshana, baby, please. Can you see? Like, she's 80s as. Like, look at that shot. Yeah, that's an 80s look, I reckon. There you go. Yeah, you're right. You're getting that vibe, right? Or like maybe it's like 90s even, like a blend between the 90s and the 80s. It's Seinfeld's friend. Like that power hairstyle kind of thing. Shoshana. Yeah, that looks like a 90s commercial, actually. Right there. Yeah, and that too. That's a mad, like, 90s, 80s hairstyle. So good. I'll get my hair done for, like, one of these, like, streams one day. And I'll do it in this style. And I'll put on bangs and some lipstick as well for the next Surveillance Capitalists interlude session. Sorry. Nappy Sand advertiser. I can't believe you brought that up the other day, and I knew what you were talking about as well. Is it Nappy Sand or Sand? Sand? Commercial? Yeah, Nappy Sand. There it is. NAP. No, they didn't have them. Too bad. I know what you're talking about, wings of cheese, though. I'm with you. I'm with you, brother.
And something had to be done. So they were floating a proposal for comprehensive federal privacy legislation on the Hill, in the Senate and the Congress.
Okay, this is really interesting, okay? So, like, they are talking, Congress is talking big time, like, early 2000s, like 2000, year 2000, 2001, about like bringing in proper privacy laws because they're sitting down, they've read the Clinton and Gore white paper, and they're like, you know what, we really should be thinking about privacy protections for people as we go into the digital age. They're sitting at this is like, you know, day dot in the millennium, the new millennium. Let's think about privacy protections and like controlling people's data sovereignty and their data rights and stuff like that. Here we are.
You were on Capitol Hill in those days, you were talking about privacy, and you were talking about how much or how little law, not whether there should be law, and that was true on September 10th. And then on September 11th, it was no longer true. Because as soon as the towers were hit, and as soon as a war on terror was declared, those three words I mentioned before, total information awareness. That became the watchword. It came out of Poindexter. Everybody said, no, Poindexter, no, you can't do that. But total information awareness was institutionalized across the intelligence community. It was the order of the day. And eyewitnesses on Capitol Hill during that period say, even by September 12th, if you were there, no one was talking about privacy. Everyone was talking about how do we get these little companies to produce as much data as possible, anticipating a day when Gus Hunt would be able to thank them. All right. So you probably are aware of this. I'm just going to mention it very, very briefly. We were facing a constitutional paradox where the the intelligence communities were constitutionally prevented from going after personal data, the secret, massive scale extraction of human-generated information that Gus Hunt was thanking and that the CIA was beholding to. On the other hand, private companies, the private sector, had absolutely no legal inhibition toward engaging in those very same actions.
Okay, so for you Americans, I guess this is more pertinent because you actually have rules about this. Like other liberal democratic nations, especially Australia, we're pretty relaxed with this type of stuff. But like you guys have constitutional safeguards and stuff like that for like surveilling your populations. You have like rules and regulations, you have laws, acts, all that sort of stuff about like how government can like kind of impose itself on the individual rights or the private rights of individual citizens and like surveil them and what they can do and what they can't do and all that sort of stuff. Like in the face of that constraint and that type of obstacle, like what's better, I guess, than like kind of like having to go through all of those hurdles? You just like give a hand and a leg up to private institutions, private corporations, which are basically developing this technology anyway. Give them a hand, give them some of your information, give them some of the tech that you've been working on as a central intelligence agency, and then get them to do it. Get them to monitor your population. Like private companies can do it in the name of profit and it can be completely acceptable. But like a government would be called into question. And like this is kind of that argument that people have like kind of about free speech, which they don't really understand. Like in the American sense, like free speech has got nothing to do with being able to say whatever you want in the public sphere. What free speech has got to do with is got to do with like upholding the liberal value of the pursuit of happiness, which is the pursuit of happiness is being able to be politically involved in the machinations of your society or your nation. And so free speech is about not having to worry about any action being taken against you by your own government if you speak out bad about them politically. If you shame your government or you say bad things about your government, there is no recourse for them to come after you and throw you in prison or silence you or something like that. That's what free speech is about. Free speech is about the government not being able to shut people down for speaking against it. So it's freedom of expression that everyone confuses with free speech. And so like if free speech is an actual thing, like it's constitutionally, you know, can you get away with it or not, when you're like, you know, stopping people from speaking freely on the internet or in a digital platform somehow and you're surveilling them, it's all a bit constitutional touch and go kind of thing. Let the companies do it, let the corporations do it, let them surveil people, let them censor their speech, let them do what the governments would traditionally not be allowed to get away with. And so like you will see this, and like she'll talk about this later if you read some of her work and stuff like that. She talks heavily about the coming together of the state and the tech sector to support one another. The state wants total information awareness, basically total information control. They want to be able to surveil their entire population and the world's population. And the private sector wants kind of ubiquitous technological reach across the world for the same type, like for the like they both have the same means, like they want total control of everything, but like one for profit, one for pure, I guess, surveillance power purposes. And like you can see that in like what we looked at last week with Google Maps or Google Earth, which everyone was like so stoked about when it first came out. Like I remember when people were talking about Google Earth when it first came out, and like everyone's jumping on and trying to search the globe and look at like satellite imagery of the entire Earth and all that sort of stuff. But like Google, the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, and a lot of the data, like the satellite imagery and all that sort of stuff, came from the CIA. They developed it, gave it to like a small startup and developed it with a small startup, and then Google came in and bought it, and then Google turned it into like a locational data mining hub for their own purposes, gifted to them quite nicely by the CIA. I'm sure there was a bit of a, hey, you know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. But like this is emblematic of this coming together of the tech industry and the state for this idea of total information awareness, which is literally we need to collect as much data as we can on everyone, so at least we know what everyone's up to and we can make decisions about what to do with it there. So for instance, intelligence services having total information control means something very different to what it means for like someone like Google getting total information control. Not that I'm saying anything bad against Google. I know they may be listening to this conversation, so thank you very much for having me on your platform to do my live streams, I'd just like to say.
And that is why, again, the people who were theorizing this at the time, for example, my friend Jack Balkin at Yale, Jack wrote, if the intelligence community was to indulge in its obsession to ascertain the future, then it would have to rely on private enterprise to collect and generate information for it. And that's what has happened. So this is another way in which our democracy stood down. And it was this urge toward total information awareness that created what I call an unwritten doctrine of surveillance exceptionalism. And it was under the flag of this doctrine that surveillance capitalism was not only allowed, but nourished and nurtured to develop at a very rapid pace over these last decades of the 21st century. And it's interesting because all of this happened at the moment that we as a society, but really the whole world, go back to those numbers, 1%, 25%, and so on. We're on the brink of this huge structural transformation, the shifting of the infrastructural, technological, tectonic plates of our entire civilization. And it was at that moment that our democracy decided to stand down, to cede our information and communication spaces to the private sector. And these crucial moves at that point created a void where democracy should have been. Our democracies should have been rolling up their sleeves in the face of this huge structural transformation and asking the question, what does a digital democratic century look like? What do we need? What rights do we need? What laws do we need? What institutions do we need in order to make this digital century a place not only where citizens are safe, but where our societies flourish because of all of the knowledge that will be generated in the wake of these new technologies. Now, more than 2 decades later, our democracies have yet to reclaim this void. And the discussion about the democratic and digital future has yet to take place. This is, of course, most egregious in the United States of America, where even now, as some of you may know, a new privacy bill is being discussed on Capitol Hill. We never got that privacy legislation, and it really is a shameful fact. Europe, of course, leads the world. But even in Europe, as we see later, we're still waiting for the kind of strength that will really leave us bulletproof.
And we've talked about why Europe has it and the Americans don't, for instance. Because like if you look at like the way that the tech bros kind of work, like the techno-feudalists, the tech sector of the bourgeoisie, there is no massive network platform. So, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, there's no massive tech sector giant that controls large swathes of data, technology, and reach on like a massive enough scale for it to mean anything. There are none of those companies within the EU. The EU has kind of developed or held on to traditional economic and commerce means. It hasn't really moved into the e-commerce sector, and like it doesn't collect data like a techno-feudalist, a cloudless corporate entity does. And so in saying that, you could see why the EU has some of the best privacy laws and protections against big tech giants in the world, because like there's no interest technically inside the EU, no corporate entity inside the EU that is lobbying this government directly as a company within its own borders to try and make sure that this legislation is watered down and protects their interests, kind of thing. If the EU had its own like section of the bourgeoisie that had massive interests in all this sort of stuff, they wouldn't have the best protections in the world. Or they might still have the best protections, but it would be a watered down version of what they've got now. The American bourgeoisie is too powerful and they lobby too hard against this type of stuff. And so, like, that's the real lesson from why the EU is so much better than the Americans. It's not because, as many people think or many Europeans think, that they're just, you know, culturally better and like they're just more on the ball than like Americans are. No, it's because they don't have the same monetary power slamming this type of legislation at home. It's a class warfare thing. There's no bourgeois representation within the EU that would stop this style of legislation within their borders.
As citizens. So the thing I want to say about this right now is that we are 2 decades into a global social experiment. And that is an experiment in 2 things happening in parallel. 1, we become an information civilization. And 2, our information and communication spaces are ceded to private companies. And they are ceded to private companies for private control, even though they are vital, critical, mission critical to life.
Thank you, Wings of Cheese. I was going to do our little segment, so maybe I'll wait until you're actually here for it. But we got to do some propaganda watch. We got 2 Sky News segments that Wings of Cheese has granted us, so we might wait until he's back to do the propaganda watch. Thanks for joining. See ya.
To social solidarity and to the endurance of democracy in this century. So, of all the tragedies that accompany this, to me, the worst of all is the opportunity cost that it imposes on global society. Because in the digital century, in an information civilization, this should be the time when we are all enjoying the fruits of unprecedented knowledge. The people of the world, all peoples, cry out for the knowledge we need to rescue the earth, to heal bodies, to build thriving communities, to educate joyful children, to solve our daily problems. And yet, in the same century, when individuals should be able to choose how to share data and with whom and for what purpose, where data sharing should be tied to individual rights, and where data use should be tied to the public good. Instead, we have stumbled into a future that none of us has chosen, and I think it's safe to say that most of us would not choose. I think of it as an accidental dystopia. How did we get here?
It's a big call. That like because we haven't dealt with this type of technology before, and because like it's kind of been stumbled upon by members of the tech industry. Like I said, like at the start of this, like it's really got nothing to do with some all-powerful group of tech nerds that got together in the 90s and was just like, how are we going to take over the world kind of thing. Like it was not as nefarious as that. But as the technology has advanced and as opportunities have arisen, their control has become more and more centered and focused on having absolute, or what do they call it, total data awareness or total information awareness, which is basically total information control. And like this stuff only happens at scale as well. Like the other week we had someone that come into the stream and was just like, oh, you know, like anyone can be a cloudless, anyone could be like, you know, set up their own cloud network and mine their own data. But like when it comes to data, like if anyone knows anything about like, you know, the birth of like, you know, chat GPT, and like, you know, when it became a household name and stuff like that, like any reason it's such a good like conversational tool is because it has access to reams and reams of data that like, you know, usual and like populations and people outside of like, you know, massive capital backed corporations could put their hands on. Like you need to have a lot of capital in order to develop this technology and to be able to feed the machine at scale with enough data for it to be viable. So like as this technology developed and as these companies got bigger and bigger and concentrated more and more things under their control, they were able to get more and more data on people and be able to work more efficiently. So like this thing is like kind of a massive, you know, compounding and growing problem. Like as these companies get bigger, then they get more control, then their AI and their control gets better, but it's all predicated on having the most data and having the most control over people. So like you can't just get into this game now. Now the horse is bolted back in the early 2000s. Like most people can't get on this train unless you're a billionaire already, like someone like Elon Musk. That's why Elon Musk bought Twitter. It wasn't because, like, it wasn't just because he wanted a media outlet to spout his own propaganda, but like he wanted to be able to get reams of information and data on users on Twitter to be able to feed that data into the AI that he's training. And like he's just recently released Grok, or a later iteration of Grok, and like it's smashing kind of the AI measures that, like, you know, beating ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all that sort of stuff. But like he wouldn't have been able to develop that technology if he didn't have access to reams and reams of people's personal information and data and written information as well that makes a large language model so effective as a conversational tool. And so like this stuff, while she might call it an accidental dystopia, like now the horse is bolted, you really need to basically be a billionaire or have a lot of capital behind you, like so much capital that's, like, you know, it's out of the reach of nation states. Like why doesn't every country have their own like AI platform or their own digital network that, like, you know, trawls for data and, like, you know, they can build it for their own uses and their own devices? It's because like this stuff is huge scale operation stuff. And as Jerry Poppins was saying, like these data centers, like all of this stuff is top secret information. Like if you are behind the scenes here and like looking at this stuff, like this is the absolute frontier of technological advancement. And so, like, you know, it's all protected, and this technology is kept under almost in complete secrecy, so you can be the one tech giant that's ahead of the game and all that sort of stuff. So like it might be an accidental dystopia, but like it wasn't accidental for very long. It's been very manufactured since, like, you know, basically the mid 2000s onwards.
Accidental dystopia. Well, in order to describe that in a little bit more depth, I want to talk to you about surveillance capitalism, and I want to define it clearly so that we can refer to it, and you will feel confident that you understand what I'm talking about when I use that phrase. So surveillance capitalism sounds melodramatic, almost as if I put that phrase together to really get your attention. But I actually, when I first thought of that phrase many years ago, I was trying to be very functionally specific. Is it capitalism? Yes. Is there private property? Yes. Is there the profit motive? Yes. Is there economies of scale? Yes. All of the sort of meta characteristics of capitalism that we have become familiar with over several centuries, those all still hold. But now they're in a specific context, which is historically qualified. Just as mercantile capitalism had unique characteristics, and industrial capitalism had unique inventions and characteristics, so does surveillance capitalism have unique characteristics. And chief among those is the discovery that this form of capitalism could not succeed unless it was conducted behind a one-way mirror. Let me explain. So the capitalism in surveillance capitalism depended upon one really interesting discovery, one very powerful discovery, and one really big idea. So that discovery was that whenever a person is in any way brushing by the internet, they leave behind a trail of behavioral signals that are visible only to the machines. This is not the personal data that we choose to share. These are signals from our online activity, from offline activity. Could be the tone of your voice, your patterns of life, the stoop of your shoulders, the direction of your gaze now as you drive your car. These are all behavioral signals captured without triggering user awareness, redefined as corporate assets, aggregated, analyzed, and computed for behavioral predictions. Behavioral signals with rich predictive value that nobody knows are there. They were discovered at Google in the heat of financial emergency. Even at Google, they didn't realize that they were sitting on top of all of this, what they used to call data exhaust. They just, they had this in their logs, and they flushed the logs, they threw all this away. They didn't understand its significance or its value. Okay, so that was the big discovery that they made. This stuff is super valuable. It can predict human behavior. Okay, but then came the big idea that would harness that discovery. And that's when they understood, and it began with Larry Page, one of Google's founders, that prediction.
Larry Page. Oh, this guy. Oh, yeah, I've seen him. Yeah, I bet he's smiling all the time, this guy. Tech Bros.
Of human behavior could be commodified.
Oh, is that silverish pink hair dye? Really? Yeah, I know this face. Definitely seen him around.
Could be sold like commodities in futures markets in exactly the same way we sell pork belly futures or wheat futures or oil futures, any other commodity. Now, human-generated information could be aggregated, analyzed, and used to generate predictions that would be the new source of commodification that would found this new era of capitalism, right? The human is what was to be commodified. The click-through rate.
It's funny because you always hear like people that like, I don't know, anti-capitalists or like rally against the system. They're just like, you know, you are the product, man, like kind of thing. And like I've always wondered what like, you know, hippies or like whoever, socialists, whatever, have meant when they say like, you know, in critique of consumerist society, they're just like, oh, you are the product now, like kind of thing. I was like, well, fuck, what do you actually mean by that? But like, this is literally that. Like, you're being mined for your data, your behavioral signals, like when you click on something, when you follow through with a purchase, when you don't, when you monitor something for a while, when you put something in the cart but then decide not to buy it, or like when you look at your screen or when you don't look at your screen, like all of that sort of stuff is incredibly valuable because you can aggregate it and make assumptions about you individually or groups and their spending and their purchasing habits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like that's like actually a commodity now, like because we have the digital infrastructure that can capture this information. That's a big difference, like in our technological, so our productive forces, the development of the productive forces, which facilitates this type of capitalism, a form of capitalism which surveils the consumer in order to sell information back to the capitalist class to then produce more profit and more value. It's a really weird inception style way of doing capitalism now. It's just like, here's all the information about the consumer for you to target your profit generating initiatives and your production, as opposed to kind of the free market ethos being like, you know, produce a good product, market it well, and all will be well. Now it's like control the consumer class and all will be well kind of thing. I can't decide if he looks like a really flamboyant supervillain or a pop star or an early mid 2000s and 2010s YouTuber. Yeah, I would go with like some type of pop star from the 90s or something like that that kind of hasn't really aged too much apart from just like going a little bit gray. And like sometimes like when they need a bit of cash injection, him and the band go on tour, like go on a world tour so they can, yeah, get a little bit of money back. Larry Page. Yeah, there he is.
You've heard of that? The click-through rate, invented at Google, became the first solid gold commodity market trading in human futures. It saved the company, and it launched the behavioral advertising industry. Interesting to note here, the engineering of these systems reverts back to Claude Shannon's original information theory.
Yeah, it is. Those guys are all about presentation. It's so stupid. And like, you know, it's even worse than that. Remember the tech, I don't know if you were in that stream, but we were looking at like the tech bro, the bourgeoisie, and we came across a guy called like Brian Johnson, I think his name was. Like he's one of Peter Thiel's mates. And like these guys are like so far down that like it's all about presentation avenue that like they're trying to live forever, and like they're trying all of these weird like remedies and tactics for like, you know, staying like youthful and young forever, and like they inject young people's blood, or they have blood transfusions from young people and stuff like that, and like yeah, are into all these weird tactics of presenting like they're forever youthful, and so like yeah, Silicon Valley and tech bros, they love their aesthetic, their sheen, like all the people in Lycra that you see like riding around the town and stuff. They've got a particular look. Looks Maxon V.
Claude Shannon, as some of you may remember that name, and associate it with World War II and code breaking. So Shannon had to create the systems that would allow
Maxon.
Information to be collected really, really fast and at significant scale, so they could mathematically plow through all of these bits of information in the service of breaking codes. So there was urgency and there was enormous importance, obviously, behind all of this. And Shannon figured out that the way you engineer a system to do this effectively is you forget about all questions of meaning when you're transferring information from one point to another. He engineered his systems so that the only thing that was important was to take transmission, number one, from point A, where it entered the system, and get it over to point B, where it had to be delivered in the system, and it still was exactly the same as the signal that was originally picked up. So that signal was delivered with absolute perfection. The way it entered was the way it was delivered. What did it mean? It didn't matter. Nothing in the system could respond to meaning. Did it exhibit what information theorists call fidelity? In other words, if it was supposed to be about, if it was information describing a tree, did it describe the tree the way the tree actually was? Fidelity, nothing in the system could respond to fidelity. So when we talk about all of these aspects of information integrity, its meaning, its truth value, its fidelity, and so forth, none of that was available in Shannon's systems. And it haunted him because he was afraid that some existing and many more to come
Back in the day, some royals used harmful chemicals to gain immortality. Yeah, there's always been this like obsession in ruling classes because they have power, and like power not only corrupts absolutely, but it just makes you want to do crazy stuff to hold on to it. But like there's always been this obsession with youth and longevity and like kind of wanting to live forever, like immortality, basically. And like, look at the fountain of youth. Like, people went kind of looking for that because they believed that there was a wellspring somewhere on Earth that would deliver kind of like this, the solution to mortality. If you go deep enough, you got the whole Andrew adrenochrome conspiracy. I don't know this one. Conspiracy. Monsters Inc. movie being a secret reference to it. I don't know what this conspiracy is. I'll have a look it up. Wikipedia will tell me the answer. Adrenochrome conspiracy. God, I can't read properly today. The adrenochrome conspiracy, a bizarre theory with anti-Semitic roots, posits that Satan worshipping global and Hollywood elites run a massive child trafficking to drain their blood. Ah, okay, right. The chemical component produced by oxidation of adrenaline. Several conspiracy theories, including QAnon and Pizzagate, in which the chemical plays a similar role to earlier blood, libel, and Satan ritual abuse stories. Right. Interesting. And that's what Monsters Inc. is a reference to. That's pretty funny. That makes sense because they're like, dipping into kids' beds and like, stealing their screams and stuff like that, which powers their whole society and helps them survive. That's crazy. Man, that's some deep shit. Scaring children for fuel. Yeah. Fuck.
Creations of his work would ignore its highly restrictive definitions of communication. And despite his misgivings, this engineering solution to high volume and velocity digital communications remained institutionalized. And by all the people in this field now, it is agreed that those same principles are the source of, quote, all the advanced signal processing that enables us to send high-speed data today. So here is something very unusual.
And Frozen was made to hide Walt's head being frozen. Is that legit? That's interesting.
That happened. High-speed data today is largely social data. It's data that wants to be true. It's data that has meaning, and it's data that we count on to have that integrity where it has that relationship of fidelity to the thing that it is representing. Unfortunately, Google systems, Facebook systems, the systems in all these companies that Gus Hunt was thanking, they've all reverted to Shannon's engineering principle. Shannon said he solved the problem of information for engineering. But what's happened is that these companies have taken the same solution and applied it to society and societal communications. And
Rapunzel, give me the Epstein list. Essentially, the head was frozen and hidden in Disney World, and the movie Frozen was made so it would be hidden in Google searches. Wow. That's crazy.
So this actual point is illustrated. In this field, we spend an awful lot of time looking for whistleblowers and waiting for leaked documents. And I'm going to explain why in a second, but there was a leaked document from Facebook. It was leaked in 2018. It described activities in that company in 2016, specifically what Facebook called its AI hub. And it described that in 2016, the AI hub was ingesting trillions of data points, in order to produce thousands of models on a daily basis, and in order to manufacture 6 million behavioral predictions every second. That was 2016. Now we're talking about trillions of data tokens being ingested by their AIs so that students can get that chat GPT to help them with their homework, and professors can cut back on the boring parts of grading exams. And
6 million behavioral predictions a second. So like, this is what I'm talking about, like at scale. Like, you can't compete with that type of scale. If you need to be predicting what like massive populations are doing and stuff like that, and like you can only have an AI that does that. Like, humans can't compete with that either. Like, you can't even have a team of people working and like trawling through that information. Only an AI could do it, and only a company that has access to, like, you know, billions of people's worth of data anyway would be able to produce the value that comes in a surveillance capitalist world, which is one where profit is now made from trading on predicting humans' behavior. So the behavioral traces that we leave behind in the data that we create when we go online and we interact, like, this stuff is like basically run into supercomputers, AI, and like it's producing, and in 2016, so like 9 years ago, producing predictions at the rate of 6 million behavioral predictions a second of every day, to be able to give information that is sold to third parties that helps increase the predictability of humans to be able to sell products to them better and push services onto them better. This is some crazy stuff. And like, you know, we're only just scratching the surface now with Shoshana. So I am going to leave it there for today. So thank you for everyone that has come along and contributed today. And then we're going to finish this off tomorrow on Twitch. And then we're going to like continue along with the whole, you know, surveillance capitalism thing, as long as we can find out some very, very interesting information on all this sort of stuff. So if you're interested in coming and joining us on Twitch tomorrow to kind of continue this crazy discussion, I will give you the link for that. So you can come and join. So go and follow on Twitch, and we'll be over there at the same time tomorrow. So that's midday my time, so AEST, Australian Eastern Standard Time, midday tomorrow. We'll continue this conversation with Shoshana and looking at surveillance capitalism. Then we'll have another Twitch on Thursday, and then we'll finish off the week here back on YouTube for Friday's stream. But like, this has been very eye-opening and like kind of unsettling, to be honest, knowing all the stuff that they're getting up to in the background. But I want to thank everyone who's contributed today and interacted. So Ollie Atlas, 4AS, Jerry Poppins, John Sorrows, good to have you for the first time. Hope you've enjoyed your stay. Wings of Cheese, of course, I know you had to leave earlier, but yeah, thank you for everyone who's contributed. And yeah, we will continue tomorrow on Twitch, so don't be shy. Go and follow over there, and we will continue with my favorite name in the academic world, Shoshana. And we'll take our trip on uncovering the truth behind surveillance capitalism. We'll continue that tomorrow. So thank you very much. And please remember, as always, I am, you are, we are a mystery. See you tomorrow. Thanks.